So I'm going to finish off inflation today. In the last class, I had defined the concept of inflation. What was inflation? Defined different types of inflation. And I had looked at some of the costs of inflation. I had said that there are mainly two types of inflation, cost push and demand pull. We also have markup inflation. And then I moved on to the Phillips curve. Phillips used long run data for Great Britain on money wages and the rate of unemployment, and he found that there was a negative relation between these two variables, changes in money wage and changes in rate of unemployment. Now, the fact that there's a negative relation as such is not very important. What is important is that the relation is stable. So that means this curve doesn't shift over time. We don't have something like this, that for 5 years it's like this, then it moves like this, then it moves like this. So, in other words, in this case, what we have is uh, it becomes an unstable relation. The relation is negative, but it is unstable. No, what we have is the line is always like this. The relation between unemployment and wage rate can be represented by a stable line which does not shift over time. Okay. Phillips's theory, however, was essentially measurement without theory. The most influential theoretical interpretation came from Richard Lipsey, who used the excess demand for labor model. I've already discussed this, so I'm not going into it. They showed using demand for labor, the labor market, why wage rate, the changes in wage rate, is inversely related to unemployment, changes in unemployment rate. Okay, then the next important development was the Solow-Samuelson modification, where the wage rate was replaced by inflation. So instead of a relation between unemployment and wage rate, we have a relation between unemployment and price level. And this made the Phillips curve more policy relevant. Why? Because now you could think of a trade off between unemployment and inflation. You can control unemployment, but this has a cost which is given in terms of rising price level. So essentially, you have a menu of alternatives. The combinations, different combinations of unemployment and inflation rate, depending on the context, you choose one of these points. So essentially, the policymakers' options were along points on the Phillips curve, and the policymaker had to choose a point on this curve. Okay. Now, this Solow-Samuelson policy recommendation, or the Solow-Samuelson Lipsey-Phillips curve, was criticized by Friedman and Phelps to be a Neve-Phillips curve. Why Neve? Because they questioned the possibility of shifting to alternative points on the Phillips curve. And in order to bolster up their criticism, they brought in the concept of the natural rate of unemployment. So essentially, the question that was asked by Friedman and Phelps was, is the Phillips curve stable in the long run? Their argument was that the earlier economists had implicitly assumed that inflationary expectations were static. And this assumption implied that the Phillips curve would be stable in the long run. Friedman and Phelps started by accepting a short run Phillips curve. They said, yeah, in the short run, the Phillips curve is negatively sloped and it is stable. You can move up and down the Phillips curve. But if you incorporate expectations into the model, then you will have shifts in the Phillips curves in the long run. So over time, the Phillips curve will shift and the trade-off between these two variables will disappear as the Phillips curve will become vertical in the long run. So what you're suggesting is that instead of a simple relation,
Sir, could you show the
yes,
previous slide once? Thank you, sir.
Upanita, can you just speak for a minute? I'm having a problem with the audio.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me, Upanita?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Uh, so what classes do you have today?
Sir, we have PG sir's class after this, and I don't think PT sir is taking the class.
So PG is taking the class.
Yes, sir.
Okay. No, it's okay. Thank you. I've adjusted the audio. Yeah. Okay. So the Phillips curve equation is, according to Lipsey and others, pi equal to Fu. Friedman and Phelps included an additional term pi star, which is the expected rate of inflation. So this equation means that the shape of the curve is unchanged, but you now have a intercept term which can vary. If your expected rate of inflation is constant, you have only one Phillips curve. But if you assume that it varies, it's not static, it changes over time, then depending on what the value of pi star is 0, you have this Phillips curve, pi star is 1, you have this Phillips curve. So you have a series of Phillips curve. Okay, so the short run Phillips curve shifts in a parametric manner when pi star changes, when the intercept changes. Okay, and as the rate of inflation, expected rate of inflation goes up, you shift to Phillips curve which are above the earlier Phillips curve. Okay, so you can see that pi star, higher values of pi star means you're moving up like this. Okay, now let's look into the theoretical part and then we are going to illustrate with the help of an example. Assume that the government increases expenditure, so G goes up, there's a budget deficit, and this deficit is covered by an expansionary monetary policy. Okay, so if the money supply and G goes up, you're going to have an increase in the nominal aggregate demand. Okay, so this will lead to a decline in unemployment below the natural rate. Simultaneously, there will be an increase in inflation. Wages will go up in the labor market. Prices will go up in the commodity market. However, agents assume constant money prices. Therefore, they will suffer from a what Friedman calls a money illusion. Friedman's arguments over here is based on Lucas's works. Lucas had argued that agents fail to distinguish between two types of inflation. Inflation can occur because the money factor has gone up, there's a rise in money supply. Okay, so there's no change in real variables, only the money supply has gone up. People have more money in hand, but there has not been any increase in either demand or supply. So the increased money supply will lead to increased price level via the quantity theory. It's as simple as that. V and T is constant. If M goes up, P will also rise. The other type of inflation is because of real factors. Demand increases in real terms. So the increase in demand, if there's no change in supply, will lead to a demand pull inflation. The problem is, according to Lucas, agents fail to distinguish between these two types of inflation. If they see inflation, they simply assume it's because of real factors. It can also occur because of monetary factors, but they don't take into account this factor. So, what is the consequence of this money illusion? The workers believe that prices are the same, only their money wages has gone up. So that means they are having an increase in real wages. They're enjoying an increase in real wages. Okay. Although both W and P has gone up, the workers perceive that only W has gone up. So real wages goes up, and what will be the impact on labor supply? That should go up. Now let's turn to producers. See, there are different producers. You have different commodities, and even for the same commodity, you have many producers. Okay, let's assume that in each market you have a monopoly. Okay, or all the producers are thinking together. Okay, so we have different commodities X1, X2, X3. So all the people who are producing X1 interpret inflation as an increase in the price of X1. So they believed only P1 has gone up, P2, P3, P4, everything else remains same. If you go to the second commodity market, they believe that P2 has gone up, the prices of other commodities, P1, P3, P4, that has remained same, and so on. And these prices include real wages also. Okay, so it's not just PJ when PJ is not equal to I. This PJ includes W also. So W has remained same, but P1 has gone up. So what has happened in that market? Real wages has fallen. Obviously, this is a money illusion because both W and P have increased. But anyway, because of this money illusion, the producers also believe that real wages have fallen. And what will happen to the demand for labor? The demand for labor will go up. They are going to hire more workers, and therefore the supply of commodities is going to increase. So, on one hand, we see that workers are increasing the labor supply. On the other hand, we see that the demand for labor by producers, that is also increasing. The net effect of these two processes is you have increased hiring in the economy, more people are hired, unemployment goes down. There's also a reduction in frictional or search unemployment. I mean, what happens is if money wages goes up, people tend to stick to one's job. So the average duration of the search lessens when the money wages are rising. You don't want to shift from here to here. And anyway, people are hiring so that if you want to shift jobs, you can easily find another job. Okay, so this is what happens in the short run. In the long run, you have disequilibrium. Why? Both the workers and producers realize that wages and prices have not changed in the manner that they had expected. The workers had believed only wages has changed, not prices. And they find that prices also has changed, so actually there's no change in real wages. The producers, let's say in the first commodity market, X1, they find that W has gone up, P2, P3, everything has gone up. It's not just their prices. And therefore, real wages has not decreased, it has remained same. So there's no real point. There's no real gain. So labor has not become cheaper, and increasing the hiring is not really justified in economic terms. So there's a learning process. Wages and prices have both increased simultaneously. Real wages, relative prices, they are actually the same. Agents realize this fact, they learn this fact over time. Therefore, they revise the inflationary expectations. Okay, pi star changes, it increases. So the decrease in real, they realize that real wages have is not what is anticipated, it is lower. And so the real wages, they had assumed that real wages had gone up. They realized no, real wages has remained at the original level. So search unemployment rises. In the short run, producers had believed that P1 only had gone up. So there was a favorable change in the price ratios, relative price ratios. But they realized no, this is not true. Relative prices are actually much lower than what I had assumed. So supply of commodities will fall. So the original real effects which occur in the short run gradually disappears in the long run as agents revise their inflationary expectations. Okay, so what happens is we return back to the original level. The only thing that has changed is we return to the real variable. The real variables returns to the original values. The only change is in the inflationary expectations. If policymakers, so what happens is you move from here along here in the short run. In the long run, this new Phillips curve comes into play. People realize that inflation is going to go up. They adjust the inflationary expectations. So what happens is you return back to the original unemployment rate. This is a real variable. This is a monetary variable. So the real variables return to the original level. U will return back to U star. So that means you are coming from here to here. Now, if policymakers want to continue, I mean, see, in the short run, unemployment had fallen below the natural rate, and so the labor workers were very happy. If the policymakers want to keep them happy, they will have to continue increasing money supply and use it to spend it in the economy so that aggregate demand rises and the actual inflation rate is always above the expected rate. Okay, so what happens over here is this is the equilibrium. Unemployment rate is zero. There's no expectations. We don't expect inflation rate to change. That is pi star is zero. What happens is when money supply is increasing, you move up. You move up from here to here, P, along the short run Phillips curve, along R0. So inflation rate increases, the unemployment falls below the natural rate of 5.5. Okay. You move to, let us say, B. Then at B, people start realizing that look, we have made some wrong calculations. Our expectations were wrong, and they adapt the expectations to reality. So they revise the inflationary expectations, makes it 2.8, so that now the Phillips curve becomes not R0, but it becomes R1. The real variable, which is U, falls from 4, rather, it increases from 4 it goes back to the original level, the natural rate of unemployment, which is 5.5. So you move from A to B and from B to C. If you continue increasing unemployment, you're going to go up like this along R1. Then again, people change the expectations, revise the expectations. You come back to E. And well, if the policymakers don't learn, you're going to set up an inflationary spiral like this. It's going to go up like this. Okay, so the important thing is unemployment is always 5.5 in the long run. If you try to reduce unemployment, what will simply happen is the long run rate of inflation is going to go up. You're going to move to higher and higher Phillips curve. You may gain in the short run, but it is only temporary, a transient reduction in unemployment. Okay, can I move to the next slide?
Sir, can you give me 2 minutes to write?
2 minutes, okay. Then let me make one change. It should be 5.5. By the way, this part comes before this. So it explains, this part explains what is A. And then you have this part describes how you're moving from A, you're moving up creating an inflationary spiral.
Done, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Now, one good thing about this process is that the process is reversible. Santiago and Sita argues that just as you can set up an inflationary spiral so that you move up the long run Phillips curve, you can also have a reduction back to the point A. So if you start reducing money supply, exactly the opposite process will occur. The workers will start believing that their real wages has fallen. They will reduce labor supply. Producers will believe that only their prices has gone down. They are going to reduce hiring and recruitment. So there's going to be a short-run increase in unemployment. Supply falls, the demand falls, and this reduces the price levels. In the long run, people realize that they were mistaken. Real wages are constant. So they adjust pi star and move to C prime. So the movement is like this. So if you start reducing money supply, you can come back to the original equilibrium point where you have the natural rate of unemployment and the expected rate of inflation pi star is 0. Okay. Now let's develop the formal expectation augmented Phillips curve. So this part was the original Phillips curve. We add pi star t, inflation. Okay. Now this FU, this function of unemployment, can be written as minus B so that there's a negative relation between pi and ut, and u star t is the natural rate of unemployment. Okay, so this is an approximation of excess demand in goods and labor market. Okay, okay. So if I just put this, substitute this over here, and I bring pi star before, I get this expression, right? This is one equation, equation one, or the Phillips curve. Then we introduce another equation to see how expectations adapt. So expected inflation in the current period is depends upon past rate of expectation and what I had what had happened in the past, in the early period, the actual inflation rate in the earlier period, and pi star t minus 1. That is what I had expected in the past. If you look at it carefully, this is actually this. Sorry, there should be this. So this is what we are basically saying is that your expectations in the current period will depend upon expected pi in the past and your error. That is, you're going to revise or adapt your expectation based on your error term. So if you had a too low expectation, you're going to increase your expected rate now. If you're expected too much, you're going to reduce it in the current period. Okay. Now let us see what are the variables in this model. The variables are pi t, pi star t, and ut, because u star t is given. There are four variables actually: pi t, ut, u star t, and pi star t. Okay, but we know what is the natural rate of unemployment. So now we have only three unknowns. The problem is that we require three equations to solve it, but we have only two equations. So it is an underdetermined system. Okay, is this part clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also you have copied it?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sir, could you give me 2 minutes?
Okay, I'll give you 5.5 minutes. And please note down the numbers of these equations. Finished, Upanita?
Yes, sir, the last line.
Okay. See, I'm getting your name correctly. I'm also learning.
Yes, sir. So done, sir.
Okay. Okay. So now we assume that the government uses different type of instruments, fiscal, monetary, whatever, and it tries to manipulate, control the unemployment rate because of political considerations. Okay. And the objective of the government is to reduce unemployment below the natural rate, U star. Okay. So if you go back to 1, if UT is less than U star, okay, this the term in brackets is negative. You have a negative sign in front, so this is positive. So that means pi star will be above the expected rate of inflation, right? Okay. So in the short run, pi star will be positive and it will also be above the expected rate of inflation, right? Now the important thing that we want to focus now is simply pi star t is positive. So that means, just 1 second. Okay, I've made a mistake over here. Let me. Okay. Okay, so once the government introduces the policies reducing unemployment, U star is going to fall to U1, but this has a cost. Inflation will go up from 0 to pi 1. Okay. The rate of inflation changes from 0 to pi 1. Right. And the economy moves to A. Okay. Now, simultaneously, what we have is, based upon equation 2, this is no longer 0. This was initially 0, right? So if it is 0, then it's easy to see that what we had assumed was if this is 0, oh, I had, okay, no, okay, let's look at this. Okay. If pi star, see, our expectation was that pi star t minus 1 will be 0. In the first period, pi t minus 1 is also equal to 0. So there's no error. And this is 0. So pi star t, what I am expecting in this period was also 0. Okay. What happens over here is the inflation rate starts to go up. As a result of this, from equation 2, we will see that the anticipated or expected inflation rate will also rise gradually. Okay. So actually, I have derived it over here. Initially, pi star was 0, as both pi star and pi 1 is 0. After the policy change, pi star is equal to 0. Okay. So this is equal to 0. Sorry, pi star 1 is 0, but pi 1 is positive. Okay, so this part cancels out. I have theta pi 1 remaining. So I revise my expectation to theta pi 1. So I start moving up like this. Okay, theta pi 1. So my expectation, the actual rate of inflation is pi 1. I revise my expected inflation rate to theta pi 1. So the Phillips curve will go on shifting. It will shift gradually upwards. What happens is, in the long run, I'm going to end up at a point C on, a point B on R2. So I'm going to shift from A to B. Unemployment falls back to the natural rate and the economy regains long run equilibrium. Okay. Now, suppose policymakers are able to use the instruments with them to control and stabilize inflation rate, right? So, in that case, pi star becomes pi t. There are no expectation errors once I reach B. And so, I'm going to, there's a return to steady state. The Phillips curve shifts from R0 to R2. We move from A to B. The inflation rate has gone up to pi 1. The expected rates are also revised accordingly. And we have a steady state equilibrium at B. The inflation rate is high or higher than before. The natural rate of unemployment continues to prevail. Okay. So in the short run, I move from here to A. In the long run, we can think of the movement as B. It's via A, of course. But if we just think of the long run equilibrium positions, initially it's D, then it moves up to B. If I continue, I will move up to D so that I have a long run Phillips curve which is vertical and which does not allow for any trade off. Let me know after you have finished it, please. Actually, I'm having a problem in the last few days. If I keep silent, the speaker becomes muted. So when I resume speaking, you can't hear anything. Must be having some connection problems also.
Sir, is there any particular technique in which this diagram has to be drawn?
Technique in what sense?
Like maybe a series of steps so that the intersection is perfect. Like when we are matching the C with A, especially.
See, you can drop this R1. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll show it to you. I'll create a graph and I'll show it. Have you finished this slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you just draw the axis and then this. Okay. Now remember that the long run Phillips curve is vertical. So what you can actually do is draw it beforehand. Okay. Okay. Now the Phillips curve must pass through these points. Okay. So it was passed through this connection. It's better if you draw the long run Phillips curve first and then draw the inflation rates and then draw the short run Phillips curve. That will be, I think, easier for all of you. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, one option before, see over here, the when I move from this point to A, the policymakers have two options. They can either decide that enough is enough, I can't reduce unemployment, so I accept the inevitable. I just stabilize the inflation rate. So I move to B. The other option is okay, let's go on fighting. So even though I move, sorry, from A to B, the government can again have a shot at reducing unemployment. Okay. So the target is to maintain unemployment at U1. Right. Again, they start embark on an expansionary policy. This creates expectation errors. Pi star t is less than pi t. So what happens now is there will be a short run movement along this Phillips curve. This is the new short run Phillips curve. You move up like this, sorry, from B to C. But again, in the long run, people revise, they learn, they adapt expectations, and you move back to the natural rate of unemployment. It's D. So you move back to D, the long run Phillips curve. And in this way, if the policymakers continue to embark on an expansionary policy in order to maintain unemployment at U1, you simply have start on an inflationary spiral, right? So this is a case that was discussed by Friedman. You have an upward rise in inflation. Inflation continues to increase, but unemployment in the long run equilibrium is at a steady natural rate. In the short run, you can have deviations from this. Unemployment rate will fall, but it will quickly go back to U star. Okay, have you finished?
So I have one question over here. So
Yeah.
do we have to mark the pi star equal to theta pi 1 in the diagram?
It's a good question. Uh, Actually, I didn't explain this properly. Uh, let's see. Just I need this equation. I think I'll write it down and then this is pi star t equal to theta pi t minus 1 theta pi t minus 1. Okay, let's move to this point. Okay. Okay, so this was equation 2, right? This is u star. This is R0. This is R1. This is R2. This is R3. This was A. This is B. Okay. Achha. Now, look at the initial point. Let's call it E. Over here, what is pi star? Sorry, what is pi? Pi? The actual change in inflation rate. You can see this from the vertical axis. Over here, what is the value of pi?
Zero.
Yeah,
Zero.
yeah. So t minus 1, let us call this 0. Okay. And what is pi star? This is also 0. Okay. Okay. So if you plug it in the equation, what will be pi star 1? Theta into 0, 1 minus theta. Sorry, it's actually 1. And this is equal to pi star. Okay, so this is again, this is 0. Okay, so you were expecting that inflation rate would not change. In reality, this is exactly what happened over here, right? So your expectations and the realization both tallied. Pi star 1 is equal to pi, which is 0. Okay, fine, there's no problem. Okay, then the government this started on its adventure. It moves to pi 2. Okay, I'm using slightly different notations over here. Or do you want me to use the same notation?
So that would be better.
Okay, then let me have a look at this. Okay. So I'm not going into the derivation again because I think you have understood this. So what we are starting with over here, the point T, the initial period is 0. So when time t is 0, pi star is equal to the actual price, which is 0. Okay, this is over here. Then we have the fiscal monetary changes. And pi 1 becomes positive. Okay. So if expectation doesn't change, I'm going to have an error. Okay. So I'm going to adapt my expectations. Okay. Okay. So what is my new expectation? It's now pi 1. Okay. So theta it is going to be pi 1. Remember, this is now positive. And the expectation was initially 0, right? So now I expect that my inflation rate will be theta into pi 1. Okay, so this is lower than pi 1. So it will be a point somewhat like this. Okay. So that means the actual movement will be something like this. I move from E to okay. So the initial Phillips curve will be this one. Okay. So if you want me to use the same notations as before, this is my Phillips curve. I have revised my expectations slightly. But is this equation being satisfied? No, because still there's an error term. The actual inflation is above what I'm expecting, right? So what I'm doing is I've got pi star. Sorry, I've got a certain rate of pi, but my actual rate of inflation expectation is theta pi 1. So there's an error. And therefore, the adaptation process will continue. Sorry, there's an error over here, spelling error over here. Adaptation will continue. So if I put this into the model, what I get in the next period is pi star t is equal to theta. This is pi 1 plus 1 minus theta. This is no longer 0. But what is this? This is theta pi 1. Okay, so in this way, this orange curve is going to gradually shift until I reach R2. Okay, so this curve is going to gradually, what is going to happen is I'm going to gradually move in the short run to higher and higher Phillips curve until I reach R2. Here, when I reach R2 or at point B on R2, my expectations are turn out to be correct. There are no errors and the adjustment or adaptation process stops. Okay, so this is the long run equilibrium. So the actual movement is I move up like this. Then what happens is we have a series of curves like this. Okay, I'm not drawing them. So I have a series of short run curves. The curves gradually moves up like this until I reach this point. I reach R2. This is the long run equilibrium. So that is why we need the theta pi ones. They represent the short run adjustments. Okay, but if you draw too much of them, it's going to become very confused. That's why I just drew one. So, Upanita, did you understand? And the rest of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think I better put this in the slides also. And you have also copied it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This, by the way, is from, I've just copied it and copy pasted this from Frisch's book. So you can also skip this if you want, or copy the first and last part. Okay. So in the long run, what happens is expectations are fully adjusted. There's no deviation or error between there's no difference between the actual rate of inflation and the expected rate. Pi star is equal to pi. Okay. There are no errors. So we don't revise our expectations. The natural rate hypothesis states that if there's no error term, error in my expectations, the rate of unemployment will be at the natural rate, U star. Okay, so you just have to set pi t minus pi star t equal to 0 in equation 1, and you are going to get 0 is equal to minus b ut minus u star t, or ut is equal to u star. Sorry, I'll just show this to you. It's pretty easy. See, equation 1 was pi t is equal to pi star t minus b Okay, actually there's no t over here. We rub it out in that. This is equation 1, and 1 prime is Okay. So if there are no error terms, my expectation is realized completely. Pi t minus pi star t is equal to 0, or this will also be 0. Now remember, b is positive. So that means ut minus u star is equal to 0, or the current rate of unemployment is equal to the natural rate. Right?
Sir, could you show that orange slide once?
Yeah, 1 second, I'll just. Yeah. Do you know who was William of Orange?
Yes, sir, there was this glorious revolution during his period. So, like, in England, I think.
Sorry, I didn't get you. What did you say, please? Could you repeat what you said?
There was this period of William of Orange when the glorious revolution happened. So,
Well, no, nothing glorious. Actually, what happened was after Charles I, who was called the Medi Monarch, he died. He didn't marry, although he had many affairs. So, after his death, Charles II's death, his cousin James II became king. And James was he was a bigot, and he used to do some religious prosecution. You know that in Britain there was a lot of fight between the Catholics and Protestants, and he was a Catholic, and he was used to oppress the Protestants. So there was a rebellion against him. The Duke of Monmouth, who was the illegitimate son of Charles II, tried to invade England, but it got defeated very badly, and all the people were those who fought on his side. They were either hung or they were sold for slavery in the West Indies. There are two books which I mean, about the Monmouth Revolution. You can read Arthur Conan Doyle's Micah Clarke. Obviously, it's fictional. And there's another story by Raphael Sabatini, Captain Blood, about a slave, one of these persons, a doctor, who was sent as a slave to West Indies, and he took the opportunity to cut out and his adventures subsequently. And both are nice stories. So anyway, so the people got very angry with him, and then they dethroned him, kicked him out, and they brought over a person from Holland. So I think because of Holland and orange is synonymous, he was called William of Orange. So it was nothing glorious, but compared to James II, it appeared glorious to the people. It was relatively peace, security, and so on. Anyway, it was an orange slide, so I thought it's interesting. Okay, so what we have is In the long run, expectations are fully adjusted. So that means the rate of unemployment will be equal to the natural rate. UT is equal to U star. So that means there's no long run trade off between the rate of inflation and rate of unemployment. If pi star is equal to pi t is equal to pi star t, UT will be equal to U star. Okay, so if your expectations are realized, this can only occur if the rate of unemployment is equal to the natural rate of unemployment. Now, the U star is compatible with different rates of inflation. Okay. I mean, basically, what I'm saying is over here, this U star is compatible with different rates of unemployment, inflation, pi 1, pi 2, pi 3, so on. So, depending on what inflation you can have a 5% inflation rate. People also expect 5%. You can have 10% actual and 10% expected, 2% actual, 2% expected, and so on. So in this way, you're going to have, you may have any rate of inflation as long as it is equal to the expected rate. But you're in the long run, you're always going to remain on the vertical Phillips curve. Okay. So the inflation rates are characterized by two properties. They are fully expected. That is, if you have pi t equal to whatever, let us say theta, pi star t is also equal to theta. And if there are no other changes, it's going to be same. Pi t is not going to change. So the long run Phillips curve is a relation between pi t and ut in a steady state, where inflation is fully anticipated and neither inflation and unemployment changes. Okay. By the way, did you get these 2 points? They're fully expected and they remain constant. Why are these two properties satisfied?
So that the unemployment rate is compatible with the natural rate.
No. See, what happens is, in the long run, we are saying that pi equal to pi star, right? Now, equation 2 says that pi star t is equal to sorry, actually I wrote this, but I should change it slightly. Okay. Now, long run equilibrium means that your expectations are fully realized. So that means if you expect pi star t, this is equal to the actual rate of inflation. This is the meaning of the long run equilibrium. Okay. Okay. They are fully expected. Right? So that means in the long run, what we are going to have, pi t is equal to pi star t. Whatever inflation rate is there, it is expected, anticipated by the people. Okay. So if I have this condition, pi star t, this will become 0. So this equation becomes pi star t plus theta, and this is 0. So pi star t is equal to, sorry, this is t minus 1, right? So we are not going to revise our expectations, should we? If my expectation is correct, if it is fully realized, I'm not going to change the expectations. So the long run Phillips curve is a relationship between the actual rate of inflation and unemployment. In a very special case, where what is the special case? The inflation is fully anticipated. There are no errors in my expectations. And secondly, the inflation rate and unemployment will therefore not change. So that means we need three conditions. Inflation is fully anticipated. Let us call this 1. So this is condition 1. And the rates of inflation and unemployment do not change. This is condition 2. So if I have this, right, given the Phillips curve equation, see, pi star t, pi t always equal, right? And secondly, if I assume that what has happens in the past, the inflation rate doesn't change, okay? So over here, let us say I have got pi t is equal to pi t plus 1, right? And okay, you can easily see, look, pi t minus pi theta t, you simply substitute over here, right, from this equation. Pi t is equal to, sorry, this is, sorry, you use this equation to substitute pi star t. Pi t is equal to pi t plus 1. So you simply substitute from the first and third equation to get this. Over here, ut and ut plus 1 are same. So you get u star t. Therefore, you're always going to, if these three conditions are satisfied, right? Inflation is fully anticipated, rates of inflation and unemployment do not change. You can see from the orange slide, as you put it, it's now orange and red. You will always have ut equal to u star. So in the long run, the Phillips curve will become a vertical line. Okay, and it cuts the x-axis and the natural rate of unemployment. There will be no deviation from this unemployment rate. You can only have the value of pi can be different. We don't know what the value is, but u will always be equal to the natural rate. Okay.
Sir, could you show the previous slide once?
Not for 2 minutes.
So 1 minute. So done.
Okay. Okay, so remember we had equation 1 and 2. So this was the expectation, how expectations are formed, and this is the Phillips curve. Okay, so we substitute equation 2, that is the value of pi star t, we substitute from equation 2. We put this equation over here. So we will get theta pi t comes over here, plus 1 minus theta pi star t minus 1, and this is the error term. This is the unemployment term. Okay. Now over here, we have got only one equation, but pi star and pi t. Okay, the pi star and pi, we have got two unknowns. Or rather, the more important thing is pi star t minus 1, which is not really observable. We know what is u star, right? U star is a natural rate. We can observe what is ut, we can observe what is pi t minus 1, these are observable. But we don't know what is pi star t minus 1. Okay. So this equation doesn't really help us. So what we do is we go back to equation 1. This is equation 1, and we take a Coic transformation. Coic means we take a lag, 1 period lag. So pi t becomes pi t minus 1, pi star t becomes pi star t minus 1 minus b, ut becomes ut minus 1. And this is constant, natural rate. Okay. Then we multiply by 1 minus theta, both the sides. So we get this term. And then if we rearrange, and we are going to get this term. You can copy it down later. I'll give you time. And then we subtract 5 from 4. So the 4 does become useful. Okay. And if you subtract 5 from 4, see there's a pi star t minus 1 over here and here. These two cancel out. So we had an unobservable term, pi star. This is eliminated from the equation to get equation 6, which is where everything is observable. I need information on pi t minus 1, ut minus 1, ut, and u star. All these are known to us. Okay, so now it's possible to estimate this equation. So you can copy it down. Here. So you can copy it down. Okay, have you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so it's the end of the lecture almost. Just a few sidelines. Well, Friedman was the main proponent behind the long-run Phillips curve. When he got the Nobel Prize in 1977, you can read it up, his lecture on this link. He identified 3 stages in the evolution of Phillips curve. The phase 1 was the original Phillips curves, focusing on the short-run period. It was a stable curve, a stable relation between the unemployment rate and inflation rate, and it allowed for a trade-off between the two. The second phase, in which he was the proponent along with Phelps, a long-run vertical Phillips curve, when you augment the short-run Phillips curve with expectations. In his lecture, he also talked about a positively sloped Phillips curve. Okay, so this is Friedman, a very nasty piece of specimen. I mean, intellectually great, but he was a Arrow, I think. He just went after Arrow. I think Arrow was a Jew, I think. I don't. Then he also went after, I don't want to mention names, but he tried to destroy the careers of 1 or 2 presidency students also, just because of the political beliefs during the student period. Anyway, but this just shows that intellect and is not related with ethics. Anyway, so he talked about a positively sloped Phillips curve. What does a positively sloped Phillips curve imply? That if you increase unemployment, inflation is going to go up. If you reduce unemployment, inflation is going to come down. So he said that this sort of Phillips curve may occur in the times of a transition period. You have very high inflation and unemployment rates. You have frequent policy changes, rising prices. The market system really breaks down. The Phillips curve then can become positively sloped. The problem was just before the last step. Frequent policy changes, rising prices. Why does frequent policy changes leads to rising prices? He failed to explain this or provide evidence in support of this. And so the third phase, the positively sloped Phillips curve theory, never really took off. So it's just a curiosity, but it's not part of your course. Talking about Nobel Prizes, this is the hall in the Swedish Stockholm University where the Nobel laureate in economics gives the lecture. After getting the award, I mean, he just goes up, gets the award from the king, and he goes back. Then he goes, if he's an economist, he gives a lecture in this hall. And then all the people are treated in a dinner hosted by the mayor of Stockholm in this hall, a very wonderful hall. And well, I don't want to post, but sure, but this is, I hope you can recognize this person after he got the Nobel Prize. Okay. And the references, Helmut Frisch, are mainly taught from Helmut Frisch, chapter 3, page 30 to 58. You will see that I'm not very sure about the pages, but I think in the last part he discusses a lot about the rational expectations and so on. You don't have to read so much, just up till the natural expectation augmented part. The starting of the lecture, the differences between the different types of inflation, costs of inflation. Ackley's book is the standard reference over here. Ackley's reference is the standard reference. Is the standard reference. You can read it up. Sorry, you can't read it up, but because I have borrowed the book from the library also, there are many other copies. I'll post it in the Google Classroom. Okay, so any other questions?
No, sir.
Acha. Not even for why I got the Nobel Prize.
Yes, sir.
Since you didn't ask nicely, I will not reply to it. As a Nobel laureate, I too have a dignity.
No, sir. I asked about it. I said, yes, I want to know about it.
It was for teaching you all in the first year. That was my contribution. But anyway, I'm just if you go to the Nobel Prize link, uh, every Nobel laureate has a in different subjects also. They give lectures, and these lectures are given in the uploaded on the Nobel laureate on the website. Sen has got a wonderful lecture. You can read it. It's biographical, but it's very entertaining. William Faulkner also gave a great lecture. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature. His Sound and Fury is his best book. I read it in a collected volume. They wanted to give an introduction to every author, and they said that the best introduction to Faulkner is his lecture. So, if you're interested, you can just read them up. Okay. So, I have finished the course, and it's 11:11 also. Okay. So, I'll post the material, and then I'll discuss the future course in some other class. Okay. Sorry. So, you can all